My name is Josh Haston. I am a correspondent for JNS News. I'm going to be introducing the first panel here this morning. This is the Regional Security Forum. Welcome, everybody. We are going to be addressing the strategic challenges and opportunities shaping Israel's future. In this first session, New Regional Security Architecture will explore the evolving threats and alliances across the Middle East and beyond, chaired by Dr. Dan Diker of the JCFA. I'm going to go ahead and read the panelists, and I'll ask the panelists to come on up and take your seats. Your names are labeled up here. We have Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Sarit Zehavi, who is the vice chair of the panel, founder of the Alma Research and Education Center, and member of the Forum Dvorah. We have Brigadier General in the Reserves, Amir Avivi, founder of the IDSF, Lieutenant Colonel Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, senior fellow at FDD and the former IDF International spokesperson, Paul Goldenberg, chief advisor for Policy and International Policy, Rutgers Miller Center, Shay, Kallach, Major in the Reserves, founder and director of the Netsach, Israel, Colonel Richard Kemp, CBE, former British Army commander, Yaakov Lappin, our very own JNS military correspondent, Greg Roman, director of the Middle East Forum, and Michael Shlomi, distinguished expert in global strategy, security, and international affairs. Thank you all very much.
Never thought. Hold on a second. Oh, yeah. Push for meal? Ah, there we go. I never thought that sitting economy class could be so much fun here. This will probably turn out to be the most enthusiastic policy conference in the history of policy conferences. And judging by the fact that every single person in this room knows at least 25 people, it's more of a bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah situation. But that's what we are in Jerusalem, is one big family. And in truth, what we're all seeing here is probably the largest single forum on any topic that anyone on this table has participated in the history of conferences. So it requires us to be disciplined in terms of the timing. But dear friends, family, ladies and gentlemen, this is the A-team, if I may say, of regional security thinking. Many of you, all of you, I'm sure, certainly I have seen each one of these men and women on this panel that could actually hold a panel for 2 hours, each one him or herself. The idea here, and this is what Alex Trayman, the CEO of JNS, said, this is the ADD conference, because we have to be very, very sharp to the point about policy. This is about correcting, advancing, and expanding policy thinking. So in most conferences where they spend 95% of their allotted 6 minutes on describing and assessing problems, here we're going to do the opposite. Because I think everyone in this room knows what the problems have been since this earth-shattering moment on October the 7th, and I would add on October the 8th, in terms of information operations, influence warfare, and the like. And the Northern Front, for sure, as Sarit Zehavi, one of the reigning experts on the Northern Front, sitting to my right, and my co-chair, and I'm delighted to say. So the introductions have been done. There are many more questions. There are really a lot of questions here. Israel is at a defining moment. It's a watershed moment in the history of the Middle East. Not since the Sykes-Picot Agreement of over 100 years ago has the Middle East been so restructured in such a short period of time, and that creates extraordinary danger and opportunity for Israel. Because for Israel today is considered a strong horse in the Middle East, in the Arab-Muslim understanding of strong horse. And the question is, what do we do? How do we create more alliances, which we're going to hear in just a moment? What is Egypt's role? Should we be more directly connecting with the Kurds? What happens to Israel's defensible borders that we know about the post-1967 period? What does it mean to be fighting and defending ourselves from without the country? Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, buffer zones, new reality for the international community, not only for us. These and other questions we're going to discuss now. What I'm going to ask everyone to do is to do what we call the cell phone monitoring system. I'm going to ask you to speak just to put it for 5 minutes for initial observation. So we want to be able to have a little bit of guided discussion and back and forth after everyone speaks. Sarit, I'm going to turn to you. You, the head of Alma, have done such a phenomenal job, not only as a military professional, but as the head of Alma, in bringing to the attention of Israeli government officials and policymakers what the major challenges are over our northern border. And I'm happy to say regret to say you've been right in the warnings that you've been issuing. Let's just go to September 17th, 18th, 2024. Walkie-talkie beeper operations changed the course of the regional war in the Middle East to Israel's favor. Help us understand from where you're sitting, what that means and what it should mean as we go forward.
Yeah. Now?
Yes.
First, I want to thank you for having me here. I drove 4 hours to come here after about a year and a half of running for shelter in 15 seconds. This is very different from the experience in the center of Israel. And that's why, for me, the reason I came here is to make sure that we are not going back to been there, done that. And I will explain what I'm talking about. I totally agree that the pagers attack, along with the military achievements of the IDF, the elimination of the rockets array of Hezbollah and the missiles array, the elimination of the capability of Hezbollah to invade, the elimination of the Hezbollah leadership, and actually the breaking of what we call the Iranian Shiite axis, which also included the fall of the regime in Syria. All of that are truly phenomenal military achievements that truly changed the course of the Middle East. But actually now we are already a few months since this war ended, and there are a few things that are happening today that are actually supporting and assisting to preserve the military achievement, even though, and this is very important to emphasize, Hezbollah and Iran are working in reconstruction day and night, 24/7, military and civilian. This is happening as we speak. What's happening to prevent that? First, there is collaboration and dialogue with the Lebanese armed forces. Many people would say much better than in the past. I am more careful. There are still tons of problems there. There are still commanders that are not collaborating, actually collaborating with the other side, with Hezbollah. There is a new administration in Washington that put a lot of pressure on the Lebanese government, and yet the Lebanese government is sometimes fooling this administration. Like with the ministers, there are 5 ministers of the Shiite axis that were nominated by the Shiite axis in the current government. 2 of them are Hezbollah. But at the same time, there are no Iranian flights that are landing in Beirut, and this is a huge achievement. It definitely poses a lot of problems and difficulties on the way of reconstruction with the money and with the weapon. There is still Israeli presence in Lebanon, but for those of us, like my generation, who remembers how it was to be in the security belt in Lebanon, it's not necessarily good news. It's very good news for the women who are living next to the border and open the window and see Israeli flags on the other side, but it's not going to be good news for long, because eventually the other side will retaliate. There is a freedom of operation to the IDF, and 40% of the IDF attacks, more than 300 attacks, I'm only counting the airstrikes, in Lebanon, happened south to the Litani River, in the area that's supposed to be empty of any illegal weapon. No, I'm talking about IDF attacks. IDF attacks. Yeah, it's been 5 minutes. Oh my God.
No. You have another 2.5.
Okay. So more than 40% of the IDF attacks since the ceasefire started were south to the Litani River. This means that Hezbollah is working in the reconstruction. This means that there is still a lot of work to be done. Iran made the decision not to abandon Hezbollah. This is very important. It's not an obvious decision, actually. After Hezbollah failed, after Nasrallah disappointed, they could have abandoned it and go to other directions, but actually Iran decided to continue to support Hezbollah, and as I've said, the reconstruction is ongoing. So is this policy going to be enough? Or everything I've just described, is this going to be enough for long? Are we going to keep this for long? Can we keep this for long? I'm not sure. The attacks in Lebanon are truly preventing the reconstruction of Hezbollah. But I see most of you don't live in Israel, as far as like looking at you. Would you come to a calm weekend in Sarit on the border while you hear booms all the time? Would you do that? Is it calming? Is it relaxing like it used to be? I'm not sure. Most of the people of the north, those who were evacuated, are provided with agriculture and tourism. How do you cultivate tourism once again with this kind of atmosphere? We still hear the sounds of war every day. I live 9 kilometers from the border, so I hear less than those who live right next to the border, but I still hear them. All of this is true also for the Syrian front, where there were already some tries to attack Israeli soldiers, and we are already in the Syrian side of the border. Recommendation in one last minute. First, we should not be misled by nice words or nice ties, either of the new leaders in Syria or of the government in Lebanon. We should invest, and this is on Israel, in community defense, which proved to be very effective in October 7th. Maximum pressure is a policy not only towards Iran. Maximum pressure is a policy also towards Lebanon and even also towards Syria. We should not enable the radicals to succeed and prosper in our borders, and we should not enable any money to get into their hands. And when I'm saying radicals, I mean the Sunnis and the Shiites alike in Syria and Lebanon alike. We should make sure that no advanced weapon is falling into their hands, meaning from a third party, either from Turkey in Syria or from the Lebanese armed forces in Lebanon. We should make sure that Lebanon is designated Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. If this will not happen, nothing will change, and it will bring us back to been there, done that, just as I felt in 2006 that we are doing something that is just not going to work. This time it must work. It's a golden opportunity now, and we must not miss it. Last word, we should make sure that we are not putting all the eggs in the basket of the UN. This proved to be not only ineffective, but also a waste of time and money. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarit. Amir, Amir, oh, there you go. Brigadier General Amir Avivi. We talked about alliances, security alliances across the Middle East. Remember the Prime Minister in August 2024 in front of joint session of Congress talked about the Abraham Alliance as opposed to the Abraham Accords, and he meant security alliances which appear to be in formation on some level. You're really one of the reigning experts on this issue of territorial security, regional alliances. Help us understand where we are now in terms of regional alliances with actors, with states we never would have thought we might join in alliances, and what it means for energy security as well.
So basically we are in a very, very unique moment in Israel history. We share basically with the Sunni moderate Arab world two main interests. One is security. We share common enemies. We share the enemy of the Shia axis led by Iran, and we share the enemy of the radical Sunnis, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Turkish axis, Turkish Qatari Julani axis, if you will. And we are in a unique moment that in this year Israel can win decisively on all fronts. We have the plans for Gaza. The discussions now are not about whether we need to eradicate Hamas or not. The plans are set. The question is the timing. When will the IDF get the command to go in and destroy Hamas? And, of course, deal with liberating our hostages one way or another. We are in a moment where the center of gravity of Israel has shifted towards readiness to attack militarily Iran. And the big question is what will happen with the talks, whether there will be a diplomatic agreement where Iran will dismantle completely its nuclear plans. It's hard to see the Iranians actually doing that. Or we're moving towards an American-Israeli decisive attack on Iran. Now, these two things, winning decisively in Gaza and winning decisively against Iran, prepare the stage for a global, regional peace agreement that will build an alliance, a Western Israeli moderate Sunni alliance that will extend all the way to Indonesia and will counter the Chinese, Russian, Iranian front, and also these two axes, the Iranian axis and the radical Sunni axis. This can stabilize the Middle East. This can be a magnet to other countries that are considering their alliances, like Lebanon, like Iraq, and other countries also in North Africa that are trying to consider their alliances. And until not long ago, they looked at China as Russia, as the stronger players, and considered allying themselves with them. Now this might change dramatically. Talking about energy, there is a huge opportunity to really create a reality where all the oil of the globe will be transferred through Israel, through the pipes of the company of Qatar. The Saudis have built a pipe connecting UAE, Saudi Arabia, all the way to the Bay of Eilat. There is a few hundreds of kilometers between the Saudi pipe and the Israeli pipe that can transfer huge amounts of oil to Europe, or the other way, from west to east. This will ensure that the Gulf states can safely trade oil without needing to go through Bab el-Mandab and the Persian Gulf. And this ensures that Israel will have endless amount of oil that will be transferred through pipes and not dependent on ships. So this is a huge deal, both for Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, and also for Israel. And this will make Israel a very crucial global player, talking about energy, but not only, because the vision talks about really transferring the whole trade from east to west and west to east through Israel. Israel is going to become the Singapore of the globe. Everything is supposed to go through Israel, and we have been preparing ourselves for years for this defining moment that our ports will be able to sustain this level of trade globally. The big question will be, when we shift the trade from India to UAE and from there on the ground to Israel, what will happen with Egypt, with Egypt's economy. This is something that needs to be worked out, but definitely I think we're moving to a reality that where the bigger the win will be. The more decisively we are going to win in this war, the greater the golden age of Israel and the Jewish people will be the day after. The day after we'll see peace agreements. We'll see the Israeli economy blooming. We'll see massive aliyah to Israel. And all we need to do, stay united and win this war. That's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. Very helpful. And you came in under. You get a bonus. You came in under the time. Amazing. Yaakov Lappin? Where's Yaakov? Hi. There you are. I want to zoom out for a moment. We had a Motzei Shabbat conversation just before today, and it's very important for us to understand one thing. The collapse of Israel's national security concept on October 7th is echoing from here and really across the world. The notion of early warning, deterrence, and decisive victory and defense as a four-legged model for Israel's national security concept that was updated in 2006 collapsed, and it requires a complete restructuring and a rethinking. Yaakov Lappin, as many of you read him, as I do, and all of us on the panel do, national security correspondent, defense correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. has some very important observations about how we might rethink Israel's national security concept in the current regional reality.
Just see if this is working. Oh, now, for JNS, of course.
JNS, look what I'm doing.
It's the J that bit. It's a privilege to speak to this very distinguished audience and to be part of this first annual conference. I'm very pleased. Thank you very much for coming. I want to take a step back, even though I only have 5 minutes. I just started the timer, by the way, to be fair. I want to take a step back and really talk about the dramatic transformation that has occurred in the minds of decision makers here in this country, in the cabinet, in the defense establishment. Because when we talk about the collapse of deterrence, we are talking about the collapse of an idea that has guided military and strategic policy in the state of Israel for most of its existence. From the days of Ben Gurion and up until the 7th of October, you could not attend a briefing with senior military officials at any rank without hearing the word deterrence. And today, when you go through the IDF after-action reviews and investigations into the catastrophic system failures that led to the 7th of October, that enabled the 7th of October, when you reach the conclusion part of these investigations, they say time and again that the main lesson that Israel has learned from this catastrophe is that never again can it gamble its national security and the security of millions of its citizens on the idea that we can deter our enemies. Jihadists cannot be deterred. And that is the core lesson that is being applied across multiple arenas. I'll do a quick dip into each one, but this is the underlying logic. The Israeli decision-making apparatus at the cabinet level and the defense establishment say they no longer are looking at the intentions of the enemy. They are no longer gambling on our inability to read the intentions of jihadists because it's impossible to do that. Rather, they are looking at what they have. What are their capabilities? And so in Syria, when we hear Ahmed al-Shara, the so-called interim president, we'll see how interim he really is, say friendly messages towards Israel through various intermediaries. Nobody in Israel is now suggesting that we gamble the security of the Golan Heights on those statements. Instead, what we have seen are days of airstrikes eliminating basically the entire Assad military capability that was left over so that there are no hand-me-downs because nobody knows what the intentions are of the future Syrian regime, of Turkey, which is trying to take over Syria, which is a core member of the Muslim Brotherhood pro-Hamas axis. The days of gambling on our ability to read intentions are over, and my hope is, because we're supposed to also talk about what we think about policy, that this has to stay in place. This has to stay in place for generations because this is the key to our security and not concepts of deterrence. So in Syria, what we see is basically is the same logic being applied in 3 arenas, but in different ways because it's being adapted, I think, cleverly to match the conditions of each arena. So the core logic is there will be no more jihadist terror armies on our borders. Not in Gaza, not in Lebanon, and not in Syria. And certainly not in Judea and Samaria. How is this being applied? It's being applied differently in each arena. In the Gaza Strip, it seems to me that we are heading inevitably one way or another to full IDF security control of the Gaza Strip. I think we're going to see the formation eventually of territorial brigades, as we have in Judea and Samaria, that will be conducting continuous security missions based on intelligence and not allowing terrorists, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Iranian proxies, to build capabilities in the Gaza Strip without disruption ever again. I cannot imagine a situation where this is allowed to happen. And this is the main focus, because from Gaza, we received the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and this is actually also the smallest arena that the IDF has to focus on, so it's fully within the IDF's capability to take full security control of the Gaza Strip, and that's why we are seeing that effort prioritized now. In Lebanon, what we are seeing is a very interesting situation. There's very little ground presence, as Sarit said. There are 5 military bases on the Lebanese side of the border. But basically what we're seeing is a very new situation. After every previous war between Israel and Hezbollah, what we had was a situation in which Hezbollah would very quickly go back to rebuilding its terrorist army, and Israel would literally sit on the fence after 2000, after 2006, until the situation became intolerable. Now what we are seeing is that every piece of intelligence that Israel gets, the Israeli Air Force, Northern Command, signaling that Hezbollah is violating the terms of the ceasefire, there is a mechanism in place called the ceasefire monitoring mechanism. Sometimes Israel will turn to that mechanism and tell, wow, that went by quickly, and tell the forces on the ground, the Lebanese army, hey, we see Hezbollah is doing, building up its capabilities, take action. And if Israel sees that action is not taken, Israel takes action. Israel sends its fighter jets to hit that target. This is a very big change, and Hezbollah currently is not firing back. As Sarit alluded to, that may change. Unfortunately, I've run out of time.
Just to put an exclamation point on that, it's the concept of prevention, which is the fifth leg of the national security concept.
Yeah, the concept of preventative action based on real-time intelligence is now the guiding factor across every arena, and long may this continue, because without that, our future in this region will be in doubt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yaakov. Richard, many of you know Colonel Richard Kemp, the former commander of British forces in Afghanistan, one of the greatest friends that the Jewish people has known in this generation, and has and Richard has, in the image of Atlas with the globe on his shoulders, taken on and put the United Nations and other international organizations on trial for their fraudulent and malign behavior. Richard, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. But what we did discuss is reputational security. Now, even this is a regional security forum. There's this internationalization, this echo effect of what is reputational legitimacy security as we assert ourselves in the regional context.
Does it work? No.
Yeah, let me try it again.
I think it's because I'm a goy, I'm being silent.
No, but
Yeah,
press it
again.
once. Yeah, just
And then go put your...
Can you hear me?
No, you want to try here? Let me try here.
It's my fault entirely. The technology and me never mix. First of all, it's a real honor to be on this very distinguished panel in front of also a very distinguished audience. I know many of you here, and it's a real pleasure to see you again. The first thing I'd like to say is that Israel is an illegitimate state. It has stolen Arab land. I don't know why you're all laughing. It has illegal occupation of areas within the country. It has illegal settlements. All of these things, you can kind of laugh at them, and you should laugh at them, really. But these are really significant issues that are believed all around the world by so many people. And as a consequence of that, anything that happens to Israel, because of these crimes, not to mention apartheid and genocide, because of these crimes that Israel has committed and Israel's founded upon, anything that happens to Israel, it had it coming. And indeed, anything Israel does in its own defense, it's wrong. This is the international narrative that is believed, really believed by so many people. And we've got to really, I think, try and do something about it, because this is not just propaganda. It is propaganda, but it's propaganda that has direct security and political influence to the detriment of Israel. Therefore, we need to re-legitimize Israel. Israel does need to be if it could be delegitimized, and it was delegitimized in a campaign that started in the 1960s, orchestrated by the Soviet Union, which is and we hear the same chants today as we were hearing back then. I was only about 3, so I can't remember it directly. But we're hearing the same stuff. And it's founded upon the idea that Israel is a settler colonialist state. What I think needs to be defined is the reality, the legal reality, not necessarily the political reality in terms of different people's political agendas, but the legal reality of Israel's legitimacy. And far be it from me to come to Jerusalem and tell the Israeli government what they should and shouldn't do. But in my view, it's time the Israeli government made it absolutely clear where its borders are. The reality that Israel's borders are from the river to the sea, including every part of it, including Gaza, including Judea and Samaria, and every single part of it. You hear nothing from the British government. Whenever the British Prime Minister or Foreign Minister or something talks about Israel in any context, it's illegal occupation, two-state solution. That's what it is. So somehow we need to shift the narrative. And the narrative, that has to be done not just by the Israeli government, in my view, but by all pro-Israel organizations around the world who do not necessarily share this perspective now, but they need to be made to understand this is the legal reality. Doesn't matter what resolutions have occurred in the United Nations General Assembly, doesn't matter what advisory opinions have been given by the International Court of Justice. The reality has to become loud and clear so that it can be denied that Israel is illegally occupying areas of its own country, its own sovereign country, from the river to the sea, since 1948. And governments have to have this explained, and they have to understand it very clearly. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy to achieve this, but we're not even beginning to tackle this problem so far. And as a result of which, you have things like the British partial arms embargo on Israel, which is very significant because Britain is withholding certain munitions which are extremely important to Israel, and partly it's based on the illegality of the State of Israel. So I think this is an area that really should be the number one focus, in my view, of the Israeli government and pro-Israel organizations around the world. I'm not suggesting that those organizations that say we must have a two-state solution shouldn't say that if that's what they feel. But that's a political perspective, that's a policy perspective. It's something that could be decided upon by Israel and others. But the legal reality, we shouldn't allow people to confuse the political desire with the legal reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I think Richard, I think one of the problems that you've pointed out here is that all too frequently we have, with our own hands, confused political preferences with legal rights. And that is why we are now facing a legal onslaught, beginning with the United Nations extending to the ICC and other so-called human rights organizations, which are really political warfare organizations. But that is absolutely the case, is that we must go on the offense and hold everyone to account legally. As we move on, Shay, we talked before about what you called really the chaotic situation in the region, and you used as a point of reference the 1985 Jibril exchange of hostages or prisoner exchange. Explain what that means and how we come out of this chaos.
Thank you so much. But as a preface, just as an addition to the comment, thank you so much for being such a big lover for Israel. Thank you. So any questions? Just trying to break the ice. Look, I'm not a top security expert. I'm just a major in the Air Force, and I had the privilege of serving as a fighter pilot. But one thing is very, very clear to me. When speaking about security itself, everything starts with the security perception. I mean, everything actually flows from the conception, the mindset, which we will expand on tomorrow. God willing, there is a specific session of it. But in simple terms, we must explain that what was the mistaken conception was. It is the belief that there is no enemy at all. There is no enemy on the other side of the fence, at least not one interested in conventional warfare and invading our territory. After all, it is not a regular army. It's just a terror organization. And if there is no real army, so then there is no need for a large army. I mean, a smart army would suffice. So this is part of the conception, but in fact, that's why actually 13 armored brigades were closed and 4 attacker helicopter squadrons were closed. Have you heard of it? So when a scenario like October 7th isn't even considered such a horrific massacre, then the attack helicopters were stationed on the Ramat David Air Force Base and in, Ramon Air Force Base, which is about like 50 minutes of flight for an helicopter. And also the fighter pilots actually don't train on such a scenario. So during the massacre, they were striking inside the Gaza Strip instead of like having or supplying the army with a wall of fire, which actually prevent or blocking any breach of the fence. So not only there is no enemy on the other side of the fence, there is a friend. And once there is a friend, you have to protect a friend. So how would you protect a friend? You can't protect a friend. Actually, it's not just a partner, it's a friend. So you have legal constraints. You are not allowed to attack any target which is not validated as a terror organization. You cannot attack if there are more than 10 to 15 casualties, innocent, of course. And you cannot attack if a lot of buildings are about to collapse. And there is a warning for those terrorists. It's called the knock on the roof procedure. Have you heard of it? So actually the Air Force were an impotent during the first critical hours of the massacre. I think it answers the very asked question, where was the Air Force on October 7th? So where does it lead? I would like to add to the column, what does this conception procedure? So how did we reach this conception? We'll expand on it tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem. But for now, we must understand its essence. We are trapped in a survival mindset. Survival mindset that breeds perpetual justification of our existence. So in this state, we are constantly seeking the quickest path to peace. Always think about peace. Always trying to thrive to peace. So even when it's utterly delusional and unrealistic, and this is the political security spiral we have been trapped in the past 40 years. It began with the Jibril deal. 1,000 terrorists were released in exchange of 3 soldiers kept in Lebanon. Many of them formed the leadership, actually the backbone of the first Intifada, including Ahmad Yassin, may his name be cursed and erased, who actually founded the Hamas after his release. The first Intifada convinced the architects of Oslo to bring Arafat from Tunis, to bring him back. And then this has led us to the Oslo War, which actually influenced on Barak to flee from Lebanon, which led to the second Intifada, which took place only 5 months after the Lebanon War, which actually contributed to Sharon's decision to flee from the Gaza Strip, which led to the massacre. So this is the spiral. So as part of, I'm finishing. As part of the ongoing attempts to justify our existence, we convinced ourselves that a sophisticated consolidation behind the fence would provide us with the right to respond and international legitimacy since we would no longer be occupiers of territories. Of course, that's the best case scenario, but the worst case scenario is that we all dream about peace, but peace has to be real. And we have a major political, just 1 minute please, we have political security consequences. For example, and the very most important one, 3 months ago, a horrific pigua, terror attack, took place in Funduk. 3 Jews were killed there. And the whole leadership, the military leadership and the army leadership, consider it as a lone wolf perpetrators, instead of understand that there is a murderous collective on the other side of the fence, not just in the Gaza Strip, but in Judea and Samaria as well. And we need to know that. In summary, and in conclusion, I think that Israel has kind of a recovery system. And the recovery system has begun to work after bloodshed. The protective shield actually, until today, maintain that there are no actually terror attacks, major terror attacks from Judea and Samaria, and the warriors and the commanders of this war are going to lead, God willing, the security and the state of Israel in the next generation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shay. Jonathan Conricus, you've been defending Israel on international media for years. Now, as a fellow of FDD, among other things, help us understand, based on what Shay says, when we talk about dreams versus reality, peace versus victory, sometimes differentiated, what it means with regard to Egypt. What is happening with Egypt vis-a-vis Gaza? Has Egypt become a frenemy? Is Egypt an ally? Is Egypt an obstacle? Help us understand.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Dan, and my esteemed colleagues here. Good morning. Pleasure to be here. And I'd like to reflect first on what Colonel Kemp said. As always, what Richard says is true, whatever he says. And I think that, one thing that really bothers me is that if we are honest amongst ourselves in this room here, in this little or this big bar mitzvah gathering that we have, then if we look at the challenges that we face, and I think reputational challenge is a tremendous challenge that the state of Israel and by and large the Jewish people faces as a consequence. Richard was polite and he didn't say, what really, or he wasn't blunt about what the state of Israel needs to do. I think that one policy recommendation should be that the state of Israel understands that this isn't only a nuisance, and it's not only something that can, cause us inconvenience, but this is a threat to our national security. And if we don't treat it as such, then we will face severe consequences, whether it's academic, financial, military, diplomatic, all of them combined. And I think we can and we should do much more to fix our diplomatic and reputational situation. It's a long, long battle, but we have to. Now, many things have changed, and I think Yaakov addressed it very correctly. Many things have changed in the Middle East. Many things have changed in terms of Israeli mindset. We are operating differently when it comes to terrorists in Lebanon, when it comes to the situation in Syria. I think we are showing a bit more teeth and power when other countries in the region are making threatening moves against us, Turkey, for instance. But there is one country that I think has tremendous influence on the current situation and on the future, where we seem to be stuck with the same paradigm of thought that guided Israeli activity and strategy for the last 20 years, and as Dan alluded to, that is Egypt. I'll remind myself and everybody that all of the weapons, and I'm not aware of any information that contradicts this, all of the weapons, let's say 99% of the weapons that were used by Hamas and the Islamic Jihad to butcher Israelis on October the 7th and to fight Israel ever since, all of them came in through Egypt. They came through tunnels that we, Israel, the defense establishment, all of the commanders of the Southern Command, the division commanders, the ministers of defense and prime ministers and chiefs of staff, all of them knew that those tunnels were open. And they've been open for at least 25 years. I know so personally because I was a company commander in Gaza in infantry and was tasked with finding and detonating a tunnel in 2004. And they've been open long before and since. And our strategy towards Egypt is perhaps the area where I think the state of Israel has failed to recognize the changing environment and has failed to use the tools available of national power in order to effect change. If we look at the situation in Gaza, I agree with what Amir said here before, as always, very correct remarks, but I think that it will be very difficult for us, for Israel, to effect long-term change in Gaza with the current amount of Palestinians there, with the current level of destruction, and without people having the ability, the very natural, humane ability, to get out of a war zone. Again, when we think of it, the conflict between Israel and Hamas is the only conflict in military history where civilians have been prevented from fleeing a battlefield. I can think of no other conflict. And if anybody here in the room or any of the experts beside me can give another example, I'd be happy to be corrected. I've been saying this for quite a while and nobody's been able to give another example. Who has prevented them? Egypt. Why? Because they know that this is how they keep the conflict alive. This is how they make it almost impossible for Israel to get a sustainable long-term defeat, win over Hamas. And the fact that they continue to block Rafah and they continue to use the means of their national strategy to prevent that from happening is to our detriment. And I don't have anything against the Egyptians. Each country, they do what they do from what they think is good for their national security. My beef is with my government, with my decision makers who for so many years, in my mind, have been lenient, weak, towards the Egyptians and are currently allowing that situation to continue. So what I think we should be doing, just as the IDF, the defense establishment, and some of our elected officials have changed policy, I think what we really need to be doing is to have a complete reevaluation of our situation with Egypt, not to undermine the peace treaty, not at all. That is a strategic pillar, and we need to preserve it, and that will come at a price. But I think that if we want to change the security situation in the south, if we want to improve first and foremost, win the war, but if we want to improve long-term, what we need to do is to reevaluate the situation with Egypt and to use various tools that we have at our disposal, direct tools that Israel has, and indirect tools by getting help from our friends, and I won't elaborate more, but to apply pressure on Egypt to do what we need Egypt to do. Never mind that it's also the humane thing to do and it's also the right thing to do, but we'll leave values and human values aside. What we need is a different policy towards Egypt, and that is perhaps the last domino that needs to fall after October the 7th for the situation really to be different. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, thank you. Greg Roman, Greg, you've talked about the challenges in creating Middle Eastern alliances between Israel and the Kurds. You voiced some strong assessment on that point. Help us understand in this new, you could argue, federal Middle East realignment, what that means for Israel.
So, you guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, just a little bit louder.
A little bit louder?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Dan, when we spoke on Friday, we spoke perhaps about elaborating on the situation of the PYD and the YPG in northeast Syria right now, and their role as it relates to Israel's security coming from its northern front. But just like the Middle East can change in 3 days, I think I might change the topic of what I'm going to speak about as well. But we will touch on the Kurds. As it relates to the opportunities which present Israel right now in terms of working with non-state actors and minority groups throughout the rest of the region, this is one of the areas that we have not necessarily touched on, insofar as it relates to a defensive necessity. We have the Druze community now of South Syria, with the entry of 67 Druze clerics who have been able to go on pilgrimage at the height of Eid al-Adha. We also see opportunities which abound in terms of Alawi diaspora communities in Europe and the United States, calling on Israel to militarily intervene against the Syrian National Army, the SNA, and Turkish jihadis in the western part of the country. We also know that there are connections right now and calls by Israel's foreign minister, Gideon Sar, to, I'll set my timer, I should probably do that too.
I have
You got it? To form some sort of informal, asymmetrical alliance with the Kurds of northeast Syria, not just act as a buffer for Syria, HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams in Damascus, but also to act as a buffer against the possibility of Turkey taking over Syria's military bases. But this is a defensive strategy. This is creating breathing room, elbow room between the Sunni jihadi alliance that Amir referred to and also Israel's northern borders, like Yaakov said, which there will be no allowance for jihadi armies to act or to exist on Israel's borders. But there is also another component to aligning with non-state actors and minority forces in the Middle East, which they use them in an offensive capability. I'll give you 3 examples of how Hamas was able to successfully do this prior to October 7th. A report came out in Newsweek a few weeks ago, and Defense Minister Katz revealed documents alleging that Iran had prior knowledge of the October 7th attacks and in fact responded to Yahya Sinwar's $500 million request to prepare Gaza for October 7th. The second thing you need to know about. Columbia activists, according to a lawsuit, Columbia University activists, according to a lawsuit filed in the Southern District of New York, reactivated the Students for Justice in Palestine social media accounts, which had been dormant months prior to October 7th, 3 hours before the October 7th attacks took place, and quickly started offering support for the Palestinian cause. And lastly, law firms like those in the United Kingdom, for instance, Riverway Law, have been actively defending members of Hamas in international offices both prior, during, and after many hostilities which have taken place in Gaza. So what we have here is Hamas has an international sponsor. They have student activists or terror supporters who are willing to go to bat for them even before October 7th takes place. And they have their lawyers all throughout Europe and the United States. More so, Israel similarly has a network of non-state allies, not in the terms of lawyers and accountants. There's plenty of those that we can count on. But there are many in the Middle East who can use the same types of full-spectrum warfare to be able to control the entire battle space, not just those involving kinetic activity, but also those involving influence operations, information warfare, the use of asymmetrical means to not necessarily identify who is the next target that the Mossad should take out with a beeper, but who hasn't paid their parking tickets and is suing Israel in international court, who has scandals, who has been involved in other instances which may be embarrassing to them, which they won't want to get out, and use that as a cudgel against their activism against the Jewish state. And in terms of the Middle East context, what's important to realize is that these same problems that activists may have overseas are also present in Iran. Because even if we speak about this in terms of the ability to either negotiate with the Iranians to end their nuclear program or to take out Iran's nuclear infrastructure, that still will not take out the individual who's responsible for giving the order to build a bomb. You must get to the next level of deterrence and prevention, which is tailoring it according to the enemy you are trying to suppress, not just so that they no longer have the desire to fight a war anymore, and we've written about this extensively at MEF, both prior to October 7th and afterwards, but to completely eliminate their will to fight. And if we're able to do that, I think that there's a lot more to talk about with all the aspects we spoke about here, but within the idea that this is a full spectrum analysis that's to take place rather than just looking at kinetic or diplomatic capabilities.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, about killing the will to fight, that's the Russian hybrid warfare way of war, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Yeah. Now we're just going to switch gears. I know we're trying to keep time desperately. Paul, we have a very, very interesting guest expert in Paul Goldenberg, played tremendously important roles in counterterrorism operations in the police department of Newark, New Jersey, am I correct, right?
DHS.
And DHS as well. And Paul's going to share a few thoughts about the role of counterterrorism operations on the ground. We're going to come down from 50,000 feet down, right down to the ground. What happens, God forbid, is another October 7th attempt, and how can our police personnel be better prepared to defend borders, defend cities, and defend towns?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. How about now?
There you go.
I'm from New Jersey. You'll all hear me. Trust me.
Go ahead.
How about now?
Yeah.
Are we good? Okay. So really, how does a young Jewish guy from New Jersey wind up in a senior police role in the United States? I took a very different, unique path. I wound up spending 6 years as a deep undercover in Miami and came back to New Jersey and headed up counterterrorism. I'm giving you a reason for why I'm giving you a little background there, and ultimately wound up 10 years at DHS, where I owned several portfolios as a senior advisor, foreign fighter, faith-based security attacks, etc. So I'm giving you a different perspective. Everything that I heard respectfully here is absolutely extraordinary. And one of the things, this is why sometimes I get so angry at our PR on Israel. I just sat here and I listened to Jonathan, and I said, what? We're the only ones that actually tell people when to evacuate during an attack? Why do I know this, not know this? And I mean, these are the things that, resonate. But the other side, and I will call them the other side's doing an amazing job. Because our children, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in Amsterdam, whether it's in Paris, and I'm taking us outside of the state of Israel right now, our children can no longer go to university feeling safe. In the United States of America, in 2024, 2025, I've interviewed these children, these students, these young people. Who would ever believe that their own fellow students would turn against them? It's extraordinary. And I keep hearing, you'll hear me say it at a later panel, the word anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is dropped so much. It's anti-Semitism. It's terrorism. It's not anti-Semitism. It's terrorism. When a young Jewish child, an American, and I know we have other nationalities here, does not want to get up and go to school in 2025, that is terrorism. And everything starts locally. We have to think globally, but we have to behave absolutely locally. One of the things that I see missing in a lot of our work is building capacity with police and law enforcement. Everything is thought of at 50,000 feet. I had the extraordinary opportunity to work in 13 countries on behalf of the OSCE. I don't know how many of you know what that is, but it's the the European Security Organization. My single task was evaluating Jewish communities across all of these countries. It was one of the most extraordinary opportunities that I ever had in my life. The reason I was selected is I was a senior law enforcement executive, so they knew I would be regarded well because I came from the rank, and I was also Jewish. So I really represented two communities. So the gap, when we talk about counterterrorism, the gap, though, is really unbelievable because so many funds and money and resources are put in to protecting Jewish communities within themselves. And so little is being done between the Jewish communities and building capacity with those sworn to protect them. The last thing I'm going to do is absolutely offend members of the Israeli National Security Services. I still have to get out of here in 2 days. But with that said, and I think they do an extraordinary job, but one of the things that I found in Europe, and I'll leave a lot of you with this, I spoke to the Jewish leaders, and I said, when is the last time you picked up the phone and really built relationships with your policing agencies? And some of them said, well, we depend a lot on the Israelis. And I spoke to the police, and I said, when is the last time you visited a synagogue to talk about protecting the communities. They said, well, the Israelis have the security at the synagogue. I said, wait a second. In Paris, in Copenhagen, in Belgium, how old is this synagogue? 300 years old, 400 years old. Yeah. Who are the people that go into that synagogue? They're Jews. I thought they were Belgians. I thought they were French. I thought they were UK citizens. These are yours. These are your people. Well, the Israelis have it covered. Well, if there's an attack in one of the synagogues, good luck calling 311 and having one of our jets fly over from Israel. That wouldn't be a bad idea, so don't get me wrong on that. So when we talk about regional alliances, I'll close by saying this. And it's not a bad thing. The Israeli security services do a wonderful job training up a lot of our diaspora security services. It's extraordinary. We need to build closer alliances from the ground up. Because at the end of the day, the ones that are going to protect us initially, are going to be the police and all their manifestations. And I'll just close by saying the police have taken a bad hit the last 4 or 5 years. Just think about democracy. How many times has democracy been thrown out there? You want to think about democracy. You want to think about democracy going south. Call 911 or 311. And a blue uniform doesn't show up, but another uniform shows up. So I'm proud to say I just returned from Poland last night, came in late last night. I was very, very, very honored, thanks to the Heidemans, to lead the largest police delegation. 65 senior police executives marched the parade route, marched alongside your brothers and your sisters, marched alongside the Holocaust survivors. And then they spent 3 weeks, the last 3 weeks in class. These are ministers, by the way. So, look, my perspective, a little different, but we're really talking about thinking globally but acting locally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Michael. Michael, yeah. Thanks for coming. Michael's, in the few minutes we have left, Michael's just going to share a few ideas about extending these regional challenges to the Horn. Because the Horn of Africa is next door, and major power competition between Russia, Turkey, Iran, dominating the Horn has major implications for our region, Michael.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
No. Greg, can you help us?
Okay.
He's okay?
Just speak closer.
Yeah, just speak closer to the mic.
Is it on now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'd like to open the perspective of threat just a little bit to you guys. People have rightly spoken about the threats of terrorism, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria. But I would like to open up the spectrum and speak about a totally different region that is lurking on us with evil thoughts and highly motivated and dangerous. By far, I believe, more dangerous than what we are encountering right now in the fronts that we are fighting. I don't believe that Gaza or Lebanon or Syria has the abilities to destroy Israel. They can definitely impose on our lifestyle. They can cause us great pain and misery, but there is no threat of existence from them as I see it. But what is happening in the Horn of Africa? I'm talking about all of the east side of Africa, from Djibouti down in the south, all the way to Egypt in the north, and you'll see how it is all connected in a second. So Iran, always seeking for another way to attack us, and failing in the northern side, has searched deeply for alternate routes of hostilities. And they found the Houthis in Yemen that have been causing us great discomfort. You know, in the beginning we used to run to shelters, now nobody even gets out of bed. And they keep on shooting missiles to us, and they are controlling Yemen and that side of the Red Sea, with Saudi Arabia at the north of them, all the way into the Aqaba and Elat port. In the Horn of Africa, we have Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Sudan, all the way up to Egypt. And this will correspond with the threat of Egypt that some of my colleagues have spoken about before. So the proxy of Iran on the ground is a group called Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is Daesh, is Hamas. They're all the same lady with a different dress, with the same intention in their heart. So Qatar, ever so cleverly, hiding behind the masks of civilized nation, is sponsoring Al-Shabaab. Iranians are providing them with all the training necessary and the groundwork. Turkey is supplying them with the weapons, non-stop. And Egypt, as Egypt, are always dancing. They are dancing as the wind blows. So Al-Shabaab now is overtaking Somalia. Mogadishu is about to fall. And when Mogadishu falls, forget about the 4 states of Somalia, like Somaliland, that's so popular for people to speak about. When Somalia falls, Al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization, will have a country. They will have a state. They will have an army. A small, insignificant army, but still an army. Then they will move to Eritrea. Eritrea is bordering on the Red Sea, just south of Sudan. When Eritrea falls, and it will fall, they will move up to the Sudan. Now in Sudan, we have 2 functions. We have the Islamic powers of al-Burhan, the so-called president of Sudan today, who is nothing but al-Bashir in a different dress, extreme jihadist, a Muslim Brotherhood kind of a group. And against them, there is a secular element called the RSF and their alliance, trying to fight them off. Just recently, al-Burhan has sold a seaport to Iran in Port Sudan, and he has sold a seaport to Turkey in Port Sudan, which means that in the next 2 to 3 years, unless it is stopped, Iran and Turkey will have seaports just south of Egypt on the Sudan coast. What will happen then?
Need 4 minutes. That's it.
If we are able to stop the spread of Islamic Brotherhood in the Sudan, then it will be contained. But if we fail, if the world fails to stop them, you want to say something? I'll make it quick then. The next step will be that Egypt will fall. The last democratic elections that Egypt had, Morsi won. 53% of Egypt is Muslim Brotherhood. Do not kid yourself. If Egypt falls and Al-Shabaab moves into Egypt, now we have a terrorist organization lurking on our southern side, on our southern border, not with Toyotas and AK-47s, but with the full Egyptian military and its full arsenal that has been built up over the last 20 years with the help of the United States. So I'm sorry to be the spoiler of the party here, but please open your heart and open your mind and open your eyes. I'm sounding every possible alarm bell that I can to make you notice the real threat to Israel's existence in the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. As we close, Thank you, Michael, for that warning. As we're going to close now, I just want to ask Sarit just to say 2 words about, and just to say that as the senior policy partner, Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, we will be compiling all of these policy recommendations and delivering them, sitting with the Israeli government, the American government, and European governments as well.
So we are very short in time. I will try just to focus on 3 notes, following everything that was said here. First, we cannot allow the monster to grow on our borders, doesn't matter which border. We should focus on eliminating of the capabilities rather than trying to read the intentions of our enemies. Second, it is clear that Iran was pushing for the unification of fronts campaign just before October 7th. Hamas went first, but Hezbollah was fully prepared. And it was also fully prepared to the same invasion as Hamas had done, including taking hostages. So here I want to say something about the issue of the hostages. I believe that if, from day one, we would have treated Hamas as a terrorist organization rather than a legitimate partner for negotiation, the hostages would be home. Here, the mediators failed. Qatar and Egypt, both of them failed. They don't view Hamas as a terrorist organization. They view Hamas as a partner, and that's why the hostages are not home. That's the only key to solve this. Wishing that we all be back soon.
Amen. Amen, amen. Folks, thank you ever so much for your attention, your leadership, support, expertise, and we'll continue to talk about these matters outside over food, which is what Jewish people do so well. Thank you very much. Enjoyed every moment.
So much. Thank you.